So it's narrow on either end, wide in the center, and then narrow again on the side. In the middle, behind the motor, is what's called a center bearing. It's basically a sort of a cup-like thing. You have a male one on the streetcar. I think I'm going to have to be interrupted here. And then you have a female one on the truck. And that they pivot in each other. It's called the center bearing. Keeps the truck in place. You also have a side bearing on either side that takes the weight. It's a little hard to see which is which, but that pivots as the car goes around a curve. That has to move, and that should be all lubricated. Now this bolster has suffered a great deal from rust, and you can see near the end how that's all, there's some rough looking stuff. That's rust that's built up between the two layers of the bolster. And another thing this bolster does is there are contacts made to it, or wires that are connected to it, where the ground goes through, and you get an electrolytic action which eats away at the steel. So there are major areas that are eaten away. And in future times you're going to, we'll look at this, and I've got it. We're looking at the side sill. This would be the right-hand side of the car. Now how do you know which is which? When you're in the number one end of the car looking out, this is the right-hand side. When you're in the number two end looking out, this is still the right-hand side. That way we only have one right-hand side to this. It's a convention that's adopted among the streetcar restorers. So along here, this sill, which runs 30 feet from one end of the car to the other, this was spliced in, we think, by the York Utilities Company at some point during the day, during its life. And then there's another piece put on here. These are the boards that Seashore put on sometime, and they're rather rough and they're not long enough, and they'll obviously have to be replaced, but they did the job for a while. Looking down here, there's a cross sill, goes all the way from one side to the other, helps support the end of the cab and so forth. Obviously this end is gone. Whether we replace the whole thing or whether we splice it has yet to be determined. Now, looking at the bolster from a different angle, this is the side bearing that's on what they call the body side bearing, and then underneath it is the truck side bearing. And there should be a little bit of a space here, but this is worn and saddled. So what you can't see is that these two plates slide over each other as the truck goes around a corner. Up above it, this is the plate of the bolster. Here's the end of it. And there's the rust that's formed here when the two pieces are against each other. I don't know how much painting they did on these. What we do is we remove all the rust and we very carefully paint and prime things so that this won't happen again. One of the big problems we have here in our preservation is that on a day when the temperature goes up in the morning, all this cold steel underneath attracts condensation, and so this will just be wringing wet. Now this is a cold day here, but we're inside, and so we didn't get any condensation. But if this were outside this morning, we'd find this either covered with frost